Bukhara Emirate. It existed from 1753 to 1920 and covered parts of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan and Turkmenistan. People of different nationalities and religions lived there, even Hindus, but most of them were Uzbeks. Emir, like Sultan in Ottoman Empire, ruled the state. Who became the Emir's women? Emir had a lot of power in his hands. He also had many wives and concubines. The wives of Emirs, Islam allowed not more than 4, were Muslim women. Concubines, named wives, were women of other religions. Most of them were ordinary free women who lived on the territory of Bukhara Emirate. Girls could be taken to the harem from the age of 13. It was a great honor to go there. The most beautiful girls for the emir were looked out for by his senior eunuch and other people close to him. They would make arrangements with the girls' parents to give them to the harem. They, of course, agreed. Although they were not always happy about it, they could not go against the emir. There were real prisoners in the harem of the emir as well, slave girls, who were forcibly taken away from their relatives during military campaigns from the occupied territories. They were also foreigners, but, unlike the free inhabitants of the emirate, they were not free. They were sold in slave markets and in caravanserais, public palaces, so to speak. It was there that the most beautiful slave girls could be purchased. Wealthy people rarely bought slaves on their own, they usually sent their retainers and medicine men who examined the girls thoroughly to rule out any infectious or chronic diseases. Young girls were valued much higher than those who had already been married. However, slave girls in the palace did not usually hold any power. Most often they served the emir's wives. Slavery existed in the emirate for a long time, until the second half of the 19th century. The emir could divorce any of his wives, or part with the concubines, if they became not sweet to him. They were also called retired wives. The women were then successfully married off to people the emir wanted to single out with his attention. Usually, such a gift was followed by a promotion. How concubines and wives of emir lived. The concubines lived in the same palace. The wives occupied the ground floor, the concubines the first. They all had their own servants. They lived quite well, except that their freedom was restricted. The main woman in the harem was the emir's mother. She basically looked after all the women of her son. They had no right to leave the palace without permission, and in general they rarely went anywhere beyond the palace gardens. The women were supposed to wear hijab, wide clothes and cover their faces with a special net made of horsehair. The harem was open to other women, if they were allowed to do so. Usually they were jewel and cloth merchants. They were often Jewish women, who were the most active traders in the emirate. Sometimes the women met with the men, but apart from the closed clothes, the women were separated from the men by a thick screen. Musicians, singers and teachers visited the harem, but the blind were favored for their choice. No strange men were to see the emir's women. But the most frightening thing for a Bukhara woman was to meet a man of a different faith, then they would turn their backs on him and hide their heads in any hollow in the vicinity. In spite of this reclusive way of life, women were careful to look after themselves. Naturally, first of all, so as not to lose the emir's love. And just for their own sake, so as not to die of boredom. In Bukhara, like in many other Asian countries, it was customary for women to line their eyes, eyebrows, and dye their eyelashes with antimony. In doing so, the eyebrows were joined into one, making what is known as a monobrow. It was considered particularly beautiful and attractive. Women also took great care of their bodies, they removed all unnecessary hair, regularly brushed their teeth to keep them white, took care of their nails. A mechanical woman for an emir. The abolition of slavery in the Emirate of Bukhara took place under Emir Muzaffar. But he is remembered not only for this decision, but also for some of his actions and wishes. For example, his dream was of a mechanical woman, one who would never scandalize, demand gifts or grow old. The emir learnt about the existence of such a woman from the gossip of his entourage. And those who did were informed of it by certain prisoners in the dungeon. They said that such high-tech development supposedly exists in the West, including the Russians. Emir told his cronies to ask the Russians for one for him. But of course, the existence of such a woman turned out to be a joke. A rumor that was spread by the Italian jokers. The sad fate of the last Emir. The last Emir was said Alim Khan, the grandson of Muzaffar. After the revolution in Russia took place, he fled to Afghanistan. At that time, the Emirate of Bukhara was a vassal state of the Russian Empire. In 1920, the workers' and peasants' Red Army occupied the capital, Bukhara, and proclaimed the Bukhara People's Soviet Republic, which was split into Uzbek, Tajik and Turkmen after 4 years. Said Alim Khan is said to have escaped with huge treasures, which he stashed somewhere along the way. And some treasure hunters are still looking for it. The Emir arrived in Afghanistan with only a small part of his harem and young children. He lived 24 years almost in poverty, in a foreign land, and by the end of his life he became almost blind. It was a great blow for the Emir when one of his sons, Shah Murad, renounced him, took the Russian name and joined the Red Army. The Emir's numerous descendants still live in different countries and on different continents.